hopefully gives you an interesting glean into what's happening now. And just off air before we go on, and then you can just go on to your little spiel. What we were saying before is the older you get, the more you look at politics like a chessboard. I can't be bothered with the moralizing anymore. You just get to a point where you sit there and go, nice move. You know?
Yeah.
And Trump is deep blue.
Well,
deep red.
I learned something some time ago that moralizing, even if that's something that motivates you, is never really a great argument. So it's not
lame.
something that you should bring out.
Yeah.
Even though it might be relevant, but just avoid it.
Yeah.
There's no point in like guilting someone. Dude, okay, so the riots. The riots were insane. And
Do you think they were?
well, now I think that they're a lot less insane. Because initially, what I assumed was that there were the Trump base, rural Midwestern folks. I mean, all of this is true. Came to protest and just realized that they could overwhelm Capitol Hill. And they had like thousands of people behind them. There weren't that many police officers, so they fucking went for it. And they went inside, and by the time the police came in, like, it was all over the news. So it was just one of those unfortunate events that happened because there was lack of security, and the Capitol Hill's police couldn't predict that it could get that bad. That's what I assumed happened. But as things get revealed slowly, I'm realizing, oh, fuck. This is something completely different. I completely missed this. Okay, so I'll preface this by, and I told Jordan this. I was reading a New York Times article. There's this guy, I can't remember his name. He worked under the Obama administration, and around late 2000s and mid 2010s, he was tasked on. He was an academic, and he was tasked on making a model to predict when third world countries will collapse. Usually when you say when third world countries would collapse, you mean a civil war, because usually that's how states collapse. There's a power vacuum and people start fighting with each other. So he developed that model. Around 2016, even though this model was specifically developed for third world countries, he started applying it to the US. And he started realizing, oh shit, our country is fitting all of these specifications. And he was saying that this could eventually lead to a civil war. One of the biggest factors that he had in his model to predict when you could move towards a civil war was not necessarily animosity of the population, but how stratified the elites are. How business interests have been completely stratified into like their own version of silos. Interestingly, Australia's elites or business interests are very uniform. Like, our elites are not divided at all. In the US, it has gone completely insane. So when we hear things like, so today, CNN, for example, was reporting some company pulled out all the donations that they give to the Republican Party. And they were saying, look, business is now moving away from Republicans completely. A subsect of business is moving away. Then there's another subsect of business that's completely on board. They still want him. Anyways, so now in that backdrop...
What are the sections?
Well, the most obvious ones are, for example, fossil fuel companies love Trump.
Yeah.
And they're not moving away any of their backing.
Yeah.
Tech companies hate Trump. They will move away their backing. So
why do they hate Trump?
Because to them, Trump serves no purpose for them. Trump actually makes things difficult. Trump makes it harder for them to access the Chinese market. Trump puts more regulations on shit, so that makes it harder for them.
Well, don't you think that this is what's actually the big issue of our time, which is now causing civil wars? Just like the last time that there was a level of upheaval that everybody said, wow, it was just this random revolution. Because as soon as you explained this to me, I started thinking back in history, and then I just realized, no, this is 100% right. Every time there's a revolution, there's just two competing factions of the elites that emerge. And in the 60s, it was about the Vietnam War, and it was just down the middle. Some of the elite wanted to be there, some of the elite didn't. And then when it comes to the Civil War, it had nothing to do with slavery. It had to do with the fact that there was a free source of labour that the agricultural sector was getting, that the factories were like, fuck you, why do I have to pay for workers? Yeah. That was really what was happening there. So that caused the civil war. The last time there was this level of upheaval was in the 60s, and people thought it was just because of the peace revolution, but that had nothing to do with it at all. And so now we're here. Don't you think that the big issue that is causing this rift is climate change?
I think that is a major factor, because you've got literally two teams here that it's harder for them to converge their interests. On one hand, there's a team that says, we have control over these fossil fuels. This is our entire business, and we want to sell this. And then there's another faction that's saying, actually, that is hampering our business projections for the future, because with climate change, for example, like if you've got investment property in Florida, climate change will adversely affect me. And then the other side is saying, yes, but it benefits me. So you just have this climate change isn't the only thing that stratified the elites. There's different models. So like, for example, the manufacturing base loves Trump, because to them, the idea, even though it's probably never going to happen, but people that manufacture shit like the idea that someone is putting regulations or putting in protections. Whereas service industries like banks or Wall Street hate that. They're like, fuck the manufacturing. Let's just keep getting all of these profits from like Japan and Germany to come to Wall Street, and we'll make money through this way. They just have different interests, right? So it's getting more and more stratified. But anyways, come to the riots. So I just wanted to give that backdrop. But the riots, what I learned was that this spontaneous riot wasn't so spontaneous, actually. So initially, when after the fallback of the riots, when Democrats started saying, we need to impeach Trump, we need to get rid of him, I thought that was an aggressive tactic on their end. That they are like, this is too much. The country is going to shit. We need even if he has 10 days left, we need to like make an example of him by getting rid of him. I found out some other details from like news articles that aren't so mainstream. So, for example, I read this research.
And hold that thought. I just need to check if my rice is boiling over. To be continued.
Well, I'll keep going until you do it. But so the reason why, so I read, for example, like I read this article today on the World Socialist website, which is, I know it's socialist or whatever, but check it out. They do some good editorial stuff too. But what we are finding out after the fall of these riots is that organizations, institutions of the U.S., institutions like Pentagon, institutions like the police, are not unanimously against this stuff. There's factions within these that are very pro-Trump, and they were actively encouraging these riots. Either they were within the population that was doing the riots, so they were like active military men that were part of that. I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about people behind the scenes. So, for example, Nancy Pelosi was contacting a lot of people during the riots saying, hey, we need help. Like, I can see glass breaking around me. I think I heard a gunshot. Her requests were ignored, and ignored with a specific purpose. A lot of people in these institutions like the idea. They don't like Joe Biden taking over. Anyways, so then I started thinking, why are they trying to impeach him? Why aren't they waiting and building a case to actually try him after his presidency and put him into jail? My guess is they don't want to do that. Democrats are shit scared of what happened. They would rather that you do a symbolic thing like impeach Trump for the second time. They've done it once before. It doesn't really matter. They want to do it so that the public, people like us or like Democrat voters, feel like Trump got something, like Trump was punished for it. But in reality, they don't want to do anything because they are shit scared. Because if they pull this, if they start actually going after, like I've heard some legislator Democrats saying, why don't we use force against these people? Why don't we start killing them? Like, as in, like, why don't we start shooting them? If they're coming into Capitol Hill, let's start behaving like a police. That is a recipe for disaster. That could actually lead to a civil war.
Why?
Once you start, okay, imagine this scenario. These rioters come in, there's ample police over there. They're storming in, and the police start shooting. 25 people are dead. Do you know how the Syrian civil war started? millions of people died because one child went outside and he started spray painting on a wall that Bashar al-Assad is the devil. They arrested him. He eventually died. This is a snowball effect. Once there's blood on hands, right now, there was one woman that was killed. But if there were 25 people that were killed, there's a lot of people in the US that get pissed off about that. Then they're filled with even more rage. And not only is it just a bunch of rural people that are filled with rage, every institution in the US has subsections of people that absolutely sympathize with these people. So if these people break off and they start attacking the government from within will start collapsing. Because then you would have factions within Pentagon that would say, actually, no, we're not going to do this. Then their bosses. My understanding at this point is that most of Trump support, or the cultist Trump support, is widespread in most institutions in the US, but it's still at the mid-managerial level or at the lower level.
Is that right?
That is from what I understand.
So the upper echelons of the Pentagon are relieved the Biden's in?
Yes. But the rank and file and even their middle management is not. They think their country has been taken away from them. So you have this dilemma over here, which is why this needs to be treaded on very, very carefully. You got everyone, first of all, every non-American, shut the fuck up. This is actually really serious. This is not a joke. This isn't like you can just put Trump in jail and everything's going to be better. This could lead to their society absolutely collapsing. There's precedent of this happening already. They had a civil war. So, and I think Joe Biden recognizes this because Joe Biden said that he has made this public. He's claimed this. He's like, he is not comfortable with being associated in any way of trying Trump after he comes into presidency. And he is 100% right. That's a ticking time bomb. If he goes too much into it, if he starts like doing these political vendettas, there will be a political backlash, and this will get even dirtier. Right now, most people are just looking at Trump's supporters as these crazy SUV driving rural folks that come in and they're like, we want our guns. There's a lot of that too, but then there's a lot more. That's why every election we get surprised by how many people vote for Trump. 2016 election, 2020 election, Trump's going to get wiped away. Of course he's crazy. But every time we realize that close to 49% of the people like him. They're not all those SUV driving. And I think it's for the US, it's the last white lash. What their society is fundamentally changing, and these are long-term demographic effects. Because I'm trying to understand what is really getting them angry, and I think it's that.
No, I think it's an inflammation.
Information.
It's an inflammation of. The Koch brothers have built up a media network that is pretty much on par with CNN and MSNBC. So this kind of thing is just like, we're living in two Americas. It's clearly designed. I hate this idea that there's just this kind of like cultural rift that happened. Really what's happening is there's two media networks that are exploiting and creating a cultural rift for a vote count. I mean, this is what Chomsky's always talking about in the Republican factions, Party, right?
Those are the media represented by.
But this is the whole thing. This is the point that I was making about Trump. Don't you think that there is no chance in hell that guy would be president if this was the 90s? He wouldn't have access to social media to begin with. The elite wouldn't be desperate enough to pick somebody that's as loose cannon-y as he is. They just would have quelled him entirely. They'd be like, I don't give a shit how popular you are. We're making Jeb Bush the winner, right? But the thing is, what people forget is that Trump, during the primaries, how he just said, I did it alone. He started gaining ground really quickly. But then Rupert Murdoch sensed a winner. And he thought, fuck, this guy could actually take the clench hold of the presidency. So he started backing him. And then after that, obviously, all of the conservative radio talk show hosts fell in line. The Koch brother network eventually realized, yeah, we can live with Trump. And so then they backed him. And then the banks started thinking, yeah, no, we can give that guy money. And so it kind of just had this snowball effect of the elites realizing that's the horse to bet on.
Well,
so it wasn't this
factions
thing
of the elite. That's what I'm saying.
Factions of the elite. But if this was the 90s and, like they were just rewriting the New World Order after the Soviet Union had collapsed, the entire elite network, I think, would just be perfectly fine with either Bob Dole or Bill Clinton being president. They wouldn't give a shit. So they wouldn't be stoking these huge cultural rifts
Well, yeah,
like they are now.
But we're living in different times. You're right.
Exactly. We're living
and
in
social
different times.
media.
But the thing is that like this idea that it's just kind of like this organic movement that Trump is taking, I don't think that that's the case. It's like completely manufactured.
It's absolutely not. And again, the more information that's being unraveled. Here's another theory. I can't confirm this, but another theory is that the reason why Capitol Hill police is being investigated. So a lot of people are saying that they're doing this because this was a clear security lapse. Like they failed to do this, heads would roll. Apparently, that's not even accurate. Yes, there was a security lapse, but the security lapse was because a lot of people working at that Capitol Hill position were sympathetic with the rioters. They were okay with them coming in many instances. In fact, there's videos where they're showing that where police is just standing on the side. They're arguing that we're saying this, we did this because the crowds were just overwhelming, that there was no reason to fight them, so we let them in. And then there's another theory where they're like, you kind of were agreeing with the rioters. So this is what happens a lot of the time, even in revolutions, when there's like an army line in front of you against the mass of the people. The break point isn't that the masses of the people will overwhelm you. The break point is that the front line of the soldier that's supposed to defend is sympathetic with the people that are coming in. So he has no capacity, will, or even power to stop them. Like he feels humiliation if he's supposed to stop them. So then these other theories that people within Capitol Hill police force were sympathetic, and which is why there's in my opinion, they're being investigated on. It's not just a security lapse, but it's also to what extent were people sympathetic?
How loyal are you?
And how loyal were you? And how much were you okay with this happening?
But this is the other thing. Don't you think that the vast majority of the footage that I saw wasn't violent?
Well, it wasn't, but it was...
There seems to be a riot in the US every month. And this one seemed to be the least violent out of all of them. Like, really, most of the footage that I saw was them just marching into Capitol Hill. Some people were, like, taking signs and stuff like that. But it seemed like everyone was... It's kind of like a tourist event almost.
Free-for-all kind of situation. Well, that's how riots often are,
I think that it was
right?
just... It was that 1984 exploiting a situation, and then there was just this, oh, my God, this is so dangerous. We've got to do something about Donald Trump.
I think
for a riot... It seemed very tame. I'm sure the French Revolution was a lot more lit.
Yeah, you know? It was. But I think the symbolicness of this, because look, people marching on to like any country's version of the parliament is actually really common, but it's usually a sign of a banana republic. For example, in Pakistan, the same thing happened in the 90s. But then no one gets weirded out by that because it's fucking Pakistan. And it's just like... rioters marching on to your parliament is a very common thing amongst failing states. It's happened. It's happened often. So for the you know what was the most? I was watching CNN, and this was kind of sad, but at the same time, weirdly satisfying. So they were reporting. So this was just after the riots had happened, right? They were still trying to make sense of what the fuck happened, and so I think it was Cuomo. He's talking to this woman who's like CNN's foreign correspondent station in the UK, and so he's asking her, what's the reaction of the international community, and she mentions Turkey's response. So this was Turkey's response. Turkey said right after the riots, they said, we would encourage Turkish citizens to avoid crowded spaces. We also believe that American democracy is strong and will overcome this, and no amount of whatever will be able to dent the great democracy that America is, right? The sad part was it was Turkey saying this to the U.S. Yeah. And Cuomo almost started crying.
Really?
Cuomo was like, because it wasn't... It would have almost been better if Erdogan's statement was, ha ha, losers, like I said. But it wasn't. What happened was, in that moment, U.S. was a banana republic and Turkey was a well-functioning country. That's what made them really sad. And I could see it on their faces. And honestly, that is a sad thing. But that's where like the U.S. is now. U.S. is But
don't you think that if the US was a failed state, I honestly think that would be better for the world?
It's not a failed state at the moment.
No, but if it's going towards that and it just gets severely impoverished, and they're no longer holding the clutch on climate action or not. Because the thing is, look, Joe Biden won this round, barely. Next election, Trump will probably come back, and he'll probably win like with a majority
the difficult bit
or
is,
whatever.
even if it's not Trump, whoever is coming back is representing that faction.
Yeah, and they're representing fossil fuels. And so it'll just be this constant back and forward. And the whole system is designed anyway to be gridlock. In fact, I got Christo to look into it to just make like a difference between Australian and US politics. And I don't know if I'm ever going to do it. But yeah, pretty much he was just saying it would have to be the worst designed system in the world. The whole system is designed for nothing to happen. So it like thrives off of gridlock. But it thrives off of like two factions just at permanent loggerhead.
But that's a double-edged sword. Because the problem with that system is, look, it's great for fucked up things not happening, but it's also very potent to frustration.
But this is the whole thing. That system, especially that system being the most important system on Earth, designed to fight something like climate change,
It's
which
probably
is just this like
outdated now.
encroaching, ever-looming threat that gets worse and worse and worse. I can't think of a worse system than that.
Well, it's clearly evident now. There's people storming into the Capitol Hill. So, like, that's case in point. That's the thing. Like, we are almost seeing this place crumble right before our eyes.
It was really weird. You know what else as well? Did you watch Newsmax and Fox News?
Yeah, I watched Fox News a little bit. Yeah, why?
Their coverage was horrified.
No,
they were just like, this is not America. This is not how we resolve conflict here. All that stuff.
Yeah.
But their audience was not on board with that. I've never seen higher dislike ratios on Fox News and Newsmax videos. The mob wants blood.
The mob wants blood. And look, they recognize that. You know, I think the most informed people at this moment in the country are people like Mitch McConnell, Lindsey Graham. Because they understand how fucked up this reality is, but I think they also understand how fucking explosive this can be. This is a problem that third world countries face all the time.
What do you go on?
So, like, for example, like in Pakistan, whatever leader you get has to tread really. I'll give you an example of this exact conundrum. After 9/11, George Bush calls up the Pakistani president Musharraf and says, you're either with us or you're against us, right? So which means you fight these terrorists or you are one of the countries that we're going to bomb. He was in such a bad position because on one hand, if he refuses the US, he'll, as he says in his book, he will be bombed back to Stone Age. If he supports US, his biggest concern was that the army that he is going to ask to go and fight these terrorists are ethnically the same as the terrorists. So now he is afraid that if I say, even though he personally agrees with Bush, he doesn't like these extremists. Like, obviously he would rather them be killed, but he knows that if I go too strong at this, there might be a rebellion in my army. Because what he was afraid, and this was happening, and I saw this, like soldiers would go back to their house and they would be hurled abuses that you are supporting the enemy and you're killing your fellow Muslim men. That's the reality that these soldiers were living in. Bush was completely oblivious to this, right? Because he for him, it's like, we need to get vengeance for 9/11. And rightly so, that's the country that he represents. So Musharraf had to like constantly say, okay, I understand how these people are literally bombing my own countrymen, but I cannot take them out immediately because the repercussion of that could be even worse. These are the sort of conundrums that third world countries face all the time. This is the conundrum that the US is facing right now. So all those Democrats that are saying, let's be heavy-handed, let's tell these criminals where they belong, very quickly you'd realize that 48% of the country is those. And then what do? Kill 48%? You might, but those 48% would want to kill the 52% too. And that's how you get civil wars. Immediately, if there is something of that sort, God fucking forbid, all of a sudden what you'd see is, so for example, certain army facility in Kentucky, which is right now the U.S. Army facility, is now a base for the rebellion. An army city in Wisconsin is now a base for the North. And then you would have the greatest, the mightiest military in the world that has ever existed be split into two. and then they will start fighting each other with the most modern machines that have ever been created. And that's a doomsday scenario for the entire world.